The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped through the mail slot of my cramped studio apartment like a paper knife to the chest. I almost threw it away with the junk mail, another bill collector, another past due notice, another reminder of how spectacularly my life had imploded. But the return address made my blood freeze. Morrison Associates, attorneys at law. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My parents had hired a lawyer. I tore open the envelope with shaking fingers, coffee growing cold on my makeshift desk, a card table I'd bought at a yard sale for $15. The legal letterhead was pristine, professional, completely at odds with the chaos of my current existence. Empty takeout containers balanced precariously on my windowsill, unpaid bills scattered across every surface, and in the corner, my guitar case, once my pride and joy, now just another piece of furniture I couldn't afford to keep. Dear Ms. Elena Rodriguez, we represent Mr. and Mrs. Daniel Rodriguez regarding the matter of the outstanding loan in the amount of $50,000, advanced to you on March 15, 2023. Despite repeated requests for repayment, this debt remains unsatisfied. The words blurred together as rage built in my chest. Loan. They were calling it a loan now. As if the money they'd given me to chase my dreams had come with strings I'd never seen, terms I'd never agreed to. As if their daughter's happiness had been a business transaction all along. I crumpled the letter, then smoothed it out again. I needed to read every word, needed to understand exactly how my parents had decided to destroy what was left of our relationship. Failure to remit payment within 30 days will result in legal action to recover the full amount plus interest and attorney's fees. We strongly advise you to contact our office immediately to arrange payment. 30 days. They were giving me 30 days to come up with $50,000 or they'd take me to court. My own parents were threatening to sue me. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I laughed, but it came out cracked and bitter. Sue me? For what? I own nothing. My bank account had been overdrawn for 2 weeks. The studio apartment I couldn't afford was month to month, and I'd already gotten the eviction notice. My car had been repossessed 3 weeks ago. What exactly did they think they could take from me that life hadn't already claimed? My phone buzzed against the card table, vibrating with such violence that it knocked over my pencil holder, an empty jam jar filled with the broken dreams of a dozen unfinished songs. The display showed a number I knew by heart but hadn't seen. In 2 months, Mom. I stared at it until it stopped ringing, then watched as the voicemail notification appeared. Then it rang again. Same number. I let it go to voicemail again. On the 3rd call, something inside me snapped. What? I answered, not bothering to hide the venom in my voice. Elena. My mother's voice was crisp, businesslike, stripped of any warmth I remembered from childhood. I assume you received the letter. Oh, you mean the legal threat from my loving parents? Yeah, I got it. A pause. Then, don't be dramatic. This is business. Business? I stood up so fast my chair toppled backward. You calling my dreams business, Mom? Because last I checked, parents don't usually sue their children for trying to make something of themselves. We gave you that money to get your degree, Elena. To become something stable, something respectable. Not to chase fantasies. The familiar argument. We'd had this fight 100 times, but never with lawyers involved. I was 3 classes short of graduation when I got the record deal. 3 classes, Mom. And you know what? I don't regret it. Even now, even with everything that happened, I don't regret taking that chance. Look where it got you. Her voice carried all the disappointment I'd been running from for months. Living in that hovel, no job, no prospects, no money to pay you back, I finished. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Not my life choices. Not my happiness. Just the money. Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. Your father and I have decided. $50,000, Elena. Return what you owe us, or don't bother coming home. The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone, staring at the black screen as if it might offer some explanation for how we'd gotten here. How the parents who used to drive 4 hours to watch me perform at coffee shops in college had become strangers threatening legal action. How the money they'd pressed into my hands with tears in their eyes, telling me to follow your heart, Mija, had transformed into a weapon aimed at that same heart, the record deal. Everything had fallen apart because of the record deal that wasn't that. I walked to my guitar case and flipped it open. My Martin D. 28 lay there like a sleeping lover, its spruce top gleaming despite everything I'd been through. I'd bought it with my first royalty check from a song that hit number 47 on the country charts. Back when I thought I was invincible. Back when I thought talent and determination were enough. I lifted the guitar and strummed a G chord, letting the sound fill my empty apartment. The action was still perfect, the tone still sweet and clear. Even when everything else fell apart, she was still beautiful. My fingers found the progression to Silver Highway, the song that should have changed everything. The demo that had gotten me signed to Meridian Records, the track that was supposed to be my breakthrough hit. I'd written it about my grandmother's stories of traveling Route 66 in the 1950s, about chasing dreams across the American landscape. The A&R guy had called it authentic and marketable, 2 words that should never go together but somehow launched 1,000 country careers. 6 months later, Meridian was bought out by a larger label. New management, new priorities, new artists who fit their vision better than a 24-year-old Latina from New Mexico who wrote songs about her family's immigrant journey. My contract was dropped. My album was shelved. My dreams were filed away in some corporate vault, never to see the light of day, but not before I'd quit school. Not before I'd moved to Nashville on my parents' $50,000 loan. Not before I'd burned every bridge in my comfortable, predictable life for a chance at something extraordinary. I set the guitar aside and walked to my tiny kitchen, opening the refrigerator out of habit even though I knew it contained only condiments and regret. The milk had expired a week ago. A lonely takeout container held the remains of pad thai I'd split into 3 meals. This was my life now, rationing $40 food orders and pretending I wasn't slowly starving. The legal letter lay on my table. Like an accusation. $50,000. The exact amount my parents had given me when I'd gotten the deal, back when they'd believed in me almost as much as I believed in myself. Dad had mortgaged their house to give me that money. Mom had called it an investment in my future. Now they wanted it back, with interest and legal fees attached. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts, looking for anyone who might have an answer. My finger hovered over Marcus Webb's number. Marcus was the only industry contact I had left, a session musician who'd worked on my shelved album. He'd offered to help me network, maybe find some backup singing gigs or songwriting collaborations. But calling him meant admitting how desperate I'd become, meant acknowledging that the girl who was going to take Nashville by storm was now begging for scraps. Instead, I called my sister. Carmen, it's me. Elena? Carmen's voice was cautious. She'd been caught in the middle of this family civil war for months, trying to mediate between her stubborn parents and her equally stubborn sister. How are you holding up? Did you know they were hiring lawyers? She sighed, and I could picture her pinching the bridge of her nose, a gesture she'd inherited from Dad. I tried to talk them out of it. But you know how they are when they've made up their minds. They're calling it a loan, Carmen. A loan with terms I never agreed to. Elena. She trailed off, and I knew she was choosing her words carefully. Carmen was a natural diplomat, 3 years older and infinitely more practical than me. She'd become a nurse, married her high school sweetheart, bought a house in the suburbs. Everything our parents had wanted for both of us. They're scared. They mortgaged the house for that money. Dad's been working double shifts to make the payments, and Mom's been taking on extra clients at the salon. They need their money back, I finished. I get it. But I don't have it, Carmen. I have nothing. Come home, she said softly. Move back to Albuquerque. You can stay with me and David until you get back on your feet. Find a regular job, maybe finish your degree online. Start over. Start over. The words hit me like a physical blow. Start over meant admitting defeat. It meant acknowledging that every risk I'd taken, every sacrifice I'd made, every dream I'd chased had been a mistake. It meant going back to the girl I'd been before I'd found my voice, before I'd learned I could make people feel something with nothing but 6 strings and a melody. I can't, I whispered. Elena, I can't give up. Not yet. I know how it sounds, I know how it looks, but I can't just walk away from everything I've worked for. Carmen was quiet for a long moment. Then, what are you going to do about the money? I looked around my apartment, taking inventory of my life. A guitar worth maybe $3,000 if I could find the right buyer. Some recording equipment that might bring another $1,000. Clothes that would fit in 2 suitcases. Books of sheet music filled with songs no one would ever hear. I don't know, I admitted. But I'm not going home with my tail between my legs. I'm not giving them the satisfaction of being right about me. They're not trying to be right, Elena. They're trying to survive. After we hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness of my studio, watching Nashville's lights twinkle beyond my window. Somewhere out there, in those gleaming towers and neon-lit honky-tonks, dreams were coming true. Record deals were being signed, songs were being born, careers were being launched. The city hummed with possibility and promise, indifferent to the girl in the crumbling apartment who was quickly running out of both. I picked up the legal letter again, reading it more carefully this time. The law firm was prestigious, expensive. My parents weren't just threatening to sue me, they were paying serious money to do it. Money they supposedly didn't have. Money they needed back from me so desperately that they'd hire attorneys to get it. Something didn't add up. I opened my laptop, grateful that I'd managed to keep the internet connected for another month, and searched for Morrison Associates. Their website was sleek, professional, focused on corporate law and high net worth estate planning. Not the kind of firm you'd typically hire to collect a family debt. This was the kind of firm you'd hire if you wanted to send a message. The message was clear: we're serious. Dead serious, but there was something else, something that made my investigative instincts, honed by years of researching chord progressions and industry connections, start to tingle. I dug deeper, looking at the partners, the client testimonials, the fee structures. Morrison Associates wasn't cheap. A demand letter like the one I'd received probably cost my parents at least $2,000. $2,000 they supposedly didn't have because they needed their $50,000. Back so desperately. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair, pieces of a puzzle I didn't understand yet starting to form in my mind. My parents were smarter than I'd given them credit for. More calculating. This wasn't just about money, it was about control. About forcing me to choose between my dreams and my family, between my art and their approval. They thought they held all the cards. They thought they could threaten and manipulate me into coming home, into becoming the daughter they'd always wanted instead of the woman I'd chosen to be. They were about to learn they were wrong. I picked up my guitar again, fingers finding a new chord progression, something dark and defiant. The melody that emerged was sharp, angular, nothing like the folk country fusion I'd been known for. This was something different, something born from anger and determination and the kind of clarity that only comes when you've lost everything. And realized you're still breathing. The song that poured out of me that night would change everything. I just didn't know it yet. As the clock struck midnight, turning Tuesday into Wednesday, I made a decision. My parents wanted to play hardball? Fine. But they'd forgotten something important about their youngest daughter. I'd inherited their stubbornness, their refusal to back down from a fight. The difference was, I'd also inherited something they'd never had, the ability to turn pain into art, betrayal into beauty, family dysfunction into a 3-minute song that could make strangers cry. They wanted their $50,000 back. I was going to give them something much more valuable in return, a reason to regret every choice they'd made that led us to this moment. The game was about to change, and Elena Rodriguez was done playing defense. The recording session at Jake Morrison's studio was scheduled for Thursday morning, but by Wednesday night, I still hadn't written the second song he wanted. I sat on my fire escape, guitar balanced across my knees, watching Nashville's skyline glitter like broken promises. The city hummed with ambition and desperation in equal measure, honky-tonks spilling drunken dreamers onto Broadway. Studio lights burning late as someone else chased their shot at immortality. My phone had been buzzing all day with calls from my parents. I'd ignored everyone, but the voicemails were piling up like accusations. The last one, from my father, had been different. His voice cracked when he said, "Elena, please. We need to talk before you do something we'll all regret." Too late for that, I thought, fingers finding a minor chord that matched my mood. The melody that emerged was darker than clipped wings, built on a progression that seemed to spiral downward like water down a drain. The lyrics came slowly, painfully. Each word excavated from the deep hurt I'd been carrying. You gave me roots, then burned the ground, said grow, but don't grow tall. Now you're counting every inch between my rise and your fall. I was so absorbed in the song that I almost missed the footsteps on the metal stairs below. Almost. But 24 years of city living had taught me to pay attention to sounds that didn't belong, and someone climbing toward my second floor. Fire escape at 11 p.m. definitely didn't belong. I peered over the railing and saw a figure in an expensive suit struggling with the unfamiliar mechanics of emergency stairs. Even in the dim light, I recognized the careful movements, the slight favor of his left knee from an old football injury. Dad. He looked up, his face a mask of exhaustion and something that might have been desperation. Elena. We need to talk. How? Did you even find me? I asked, though I was already standing, already moving toward the window to let him in. Despite everything, this was still my father, and he'd traveled 800 miles to reach me. Carmen gave me your address. He climbed the final steps with obvious effort. Can I come up? I helped him through my window, an undignified entrance for a man who'd always prided himself on his bearing. He stood in my tiny studio apartment, taking in the takeout containers, the unpaid bills, the guitar case propped against the wall. Like a faithful dog. Jesus, Elena. You're living like this? Welcome to the consequences of your ultimatum, I said, not bothering to hide the bitterness. Coffee? Or are you just here to serve me with more legal papers? He flinched. There aren't going to be any more papers. I fired the lawyers this morning. That stopped me cold. What? Morrison Associates is off the case. I told them the family matter had been resolved. He sat heavily on my one chair, suddenly looking every one of his 58 years. Though I'm not sure it has been. I remained standing, arms crossed, guitar still strapped across my shoulder like armor. Then why are you here? Because your mother is convinced you hate us. Because I haven't slept in 3 days thinking about what we've done to you. Because, he stopped, running his hands through graying hair. Because I got a very interesting phone call today from someone named Jake Morrison. My blood froze. What did he want? To ask my permission to release a song called Clipped Wings that apparently names your mother and me specifically as examples of manipulative parents who try to control their children through financial coercion. Dad's voice was carefully neutral, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. He said it was going to be a powerful statement about family dysfunction in America. I'm not a minor, Dad. He doesn't need your permission. No, but he wanted us to know it was coming. Professional courtesy, he called it. Dad leaned forward, his expression intense. Elena, is that really how you want to handle this? By destroying your family in public? The question hit harder than I'd expected. For months, I'd been telling myself this was about justice, about standing up for myself, about not letting them manipulate me anymore. But sitting here with my father, who looked smaller and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him, I had to confront the possibility that I was really just seeking revenge. You started this war, I said, but the words felt hollow even as I spoke them. I know. God help me, I know. He was quiet for a moment, studying his hands. There are things you don't understand about why we did what we did. Things we should have told you years ago. Then tell me now. He looked around my apartment again, as if seeing it for the first time. Really seeing it. The empty refrigerator with its door slightly ajar. The mattress on the floor. The careful way I'd arranged my few possessions to hide just how few they were. The $50,000, he began, then stopped. Christ, where do I even start? How about with the truth? The actual truth, not whatever version you think will make you look better. He nodded slowly. Your mother and I have been lying to you. About our finances, about where the money came from, about why we really wanted you to come home. I felt a strange mixture of vindication and dread. Part of me had known there was more to the story, but another part had hoped I was wrong. 5 years ago, I developed a modification to a hydraulic system in my shop. Just a small thing, made heavy machinery run more efficiently. I patented it mostly as a joke, you know how I am about paperwork and bureaucracy. Figured maybe I'd make enough to buy your mother a nice anniversary gift. I waited, sensing the build-up to something significant. The patent got licensed by a parts manufacturer. Then another. Then construction companies started demanding it in all their equipment contracts. He met my eyes. Elena, that little modification has generated over $3 million in royalties. The number hit me like a physical blow. $3 million. While I'd been living on ramen noodles and guilt, my parents had been millionaires. You're kidding. I wish I were. The money started coming in faster than we knew how to handle. We were terrified to tell anyone, you, Carmen, our friends. We thought people would see us differently, treat us differently. So you just pretended to be the same middle-class people you'd always been. We tried to. But the money changed us anyway. Made us paranoid, suspicious. When you got the record deal and asked for help, we saw it as validation of our worst fears. That I was using you. That everyone was using us. That success would bring out the worst in people, even our own children. He stood up, pacing the small space. When your deal fell through and you didn't come home immediately, when you stayed in Nashville despite the setbacks, we convinced ourselves you were ashamed of us. That you'd taken our money and decided you were too good for your family. The accusation stung because there was a grain of truth in it. I had been embarrassed by my small-town roots when I'd first arrived in Nashville. I had avoided talking about my family with industry contacts who assumed I was just another privileged kid playing at being an artist. So you hired expensive lawyers to force me home. It was stupid. Cruel. But we thought if we made it about business, about the money, you'd have to face us. Have to explain why you'd rather struggle in poverty than come home to people who love you. I sank onto my mattress, overwhelmed by the implications of what he was telling me. Dad, do you have any idea what you put me through? I've been living on charity. I let bill collectors harass me because I thought I owed you everything. I wrote songs about being a failure, about disappointing my family. I know. Jake Morrison played me one of them over the phone. His voice was thick with emotion. Elena, listening to you sing about the guilt we'd made you carry, it broke something in me. Made me realize we'd become the kind of parents we swore we'd never be. And now you want to make it right? I want to try. If you'll let me. I looked at this man who'd taught me to change oil and throw a fastball, who'd driven 4 hours to watch me play coffee shops, who'd somehow transformed into a stranger threatening legal action. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. Why should I trust you? After months of lies and manipulation, why should I believe anything you say? Because I'm about to give you something more valuable than trust, he said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. I'm giving you power. I opened the envelope and found official-looking documents I didn't understand. Stock transfers, trust agreements, legal language that might as well have been hieroglyphics. What is this? $1 million, he said. Simply. In a trust that you control completely. No strings, no conditions, no expectations of gratitude or reconciliation. It's yours whether you ever speak to us again or not. I stared at the papers, trying to process what I was seeing. Dad, I can't, you can and you will. It's not charity, Elena. It's an apology. For the ultimatum, for the lawyers, for making you feel like your dreams were a burden instead of a gift. What about Carmen? She gets the same. Plus we're setting up a foundation to fund music education programs, like you always said you wanted to do if you ever made it big. He smiled sadly. Turns out we didn't need to wait for you to make it big. We could have done it years ago if we hadn't been so afraid of our own money. I set the papers aside, my hands shaking. $1 million. More money than I'd ever imagined having, certainly more than I'd ever expected to earn from music. It should have solved everything, should have made me feel grateful and vindicated and free. Instead, I felt empty. This doesn't fix what happened between us, I said. I know. Money can't undo the damage we've done. But maybe it can give you the freedom to decide whether you want to try to rebuild something with us, or whether you'd rather just move on with your life. He walked to my window, preparing to leave the same undignified way he'd entered. Then he turned back. For what it's worth, Elena, I'm proud of you. Not because of the record deals or the songs or any of that industry nonsense. I'm proud because you didn't come crawling home when things got hard. You stayed and fought and built something real out of nothing but talent and stubbornness. I inherited the stubbornness from you. Yeah, you did. And maybe that's not such a bad thing. After he left, I sat on my fire escape until dawn, guitar silent across my knees, watching the city wake up around me. The trust documents sat on my mattress like a loaded gun, powerful enough to change everything, dangerous enough to destroy whatever authentic artistic voice I'd been developing. At 8 a.m., I called Jake Morrison. "Elena, perfect timing," he said without preamble. "I just got off the phone with a radio programmer in Austin who wants to premiere Clipped Wings tomorrow. This could be huge. Jake, we need to talk. In person. Now." An hour later, I sat in his office overlooking the Cumberland River, the trust documents spread across his glass table like evidence in a trial. "Holy shit," he said after reading through everything. "Your parents are loaded. Apparently. And they want to give you $1 million to make this all go away?" "Not to make it go away. Just to give me options." Jake leaned back in his chair, studying me with the intensity he usually reserved for mixing boards and master recordings. "What do you want to do?" It was the same question my mother had asked weeks ago, but now it carried different weight. What did I want? Revenge against parents who'd manipulated me? Vindication for months of struggle and shame? Or something harder to achieve and more valuable in the long run? "I want to rewrite the song," I said finally. "Clipped Wings?" "Elena, that song is perfect as it is. Raw, angry, authentic. Don't let money make you compromise your art." "I'm not compromising. I'm evolving." I picked up my guitar, fingers finding the chord progression I'd been working on the night before. What if instead of a song about parents who try to control their children, I wrote a song about a family that lost its way but found each other again? That's not as marketable. Maybe not. But it's truer. And isn't that what you said you wanted? Truth? Jake was quiet for a long moment, the wheels turning behind his eyes. Finally, he smiled. "Play me what you've got." The new song poured out. Of me, different from Clipped Wings, but no less powerful. Where the original had been about betrayal and manipulation, this one was about forgiveness and growth. About parents who made terrible mistakes and a daughter who found the strength to love them anyway. About money that couldn't buy back trust but could fund second chances. When I finished, Jake was nodding slowly. "It's good. Really good. But Elena, are you sure? The industry loves a good family dysfunction anthem. This feels more like therapy." "Maybe that's what the industry needs," I said. "Maybe people are tired of songs that tear families apart and ready for ones that put them back together." "And if it doesn't sell?" I thought about the trust documents, about the financial security that would let me take artistic risks without worrying about rent money or ramen noodles. About the freedom to write songs that mattered instead of songs that would pay the bills. "Then I'll write another one. And another one after that. Until I find the audience that's ready for music about healing instead of hurting." 3 months later, Second Chances peaked at number 12 on the country charts and number 4 on the adult contemporary charts. More importantly, it generated thousands of emails from listeners who said it helped them reconnect with estranged family members. My parents flew to Nashville for my album release party, looking uncomfortable but proud in the trendy Gulch venue Jake had rented. My mother wore a dress that probably cost more than my old apartment's monthly rent, but she hugged me like I was still the little girl who used to fall asleep in her lap. "I'm sorry we made such a mess of things," she whispered in my ear as cameras flashed around us. "We all made mistakes, Mom. But we're here now." The foundation we'd established had already funded music programs in 12 schools across New Mexico. Carmen had quit her nursing job to run it full-time, bringing her practical nature and organizational skills to bear on the bureaucracy of charitable giving. As for the $1 million in trust, I'd used exactly none of it for personal expenses. Instead, it sat in careful investments, growing quietly while I lived off my music income, which, thanks to Second Chances and its follow-up singles, was finally enough to support me comfortably. But the real value of that money wasn't financial. It was the knowledge that I didn't need it, that I could choose to struggle or succeed based on my own talents and decisions rather than family obligations or expectations. I bought a small house in East Nashville, nothing fancy but with enough space for a home studio and a guest room for when my parents visited. Which they did, monthly, still learning how to be proud of a daughter whose life looked nothing like what they'd planned for her. The last song on my debut album was called 50,000 Words, a gentle ballad about how sometimes the most expensive lessons are the ones that teach us what we already knew, that love isn't about control. Success isn't about security, and family isn't about blood but about choosing to show up for each other even when it's hard. It never charted, never got radio play, never generated much income. But it was my father's favorite song, the one he requested every time I played guitar at family gatherings. The one that proved sometimes the most powerful art comes not from our pain, but from our healing. The ultimatum that had threatened to destroy our family had ultimately saved it, forcing us to confront truths we'd been avoiding for years. My parents learned that love without trust is just manipulation, and I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means choosing growth over grudges. We gave each other reasons to mean it when we said we were sorry. And in the end, that was worth more than $50,000, more than legal threats, more than all the pride and stubbornness that had nearly cost us each other. Sometimes the best revenge is refusing to need it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.